former Whitewater independent counsel, Robert Ray, on all of that. What do you think, Rob?
Not pretty much. It seems to vindicate what the Attorney General said would be in the report. You aren't hearing anything from Democrats now about, oh, wait a minute, we want to see the whole report. They're actually going to get the whole report, with the exception of 6E material, which I think everybody concedes can't be released unless there's a court order to do so. And so the Democrats are not going to be forced into the position of trying to generate momentum toward an impeachment proceeding if they want to see any more of the Mueller report, which I don't think they're prepared to do. And at the end of the day, the president is right. It's game over. It's over. Over means over. It doesn't mean it's going to just continue on.
It doesn't stop hearings that could go on.
Sure, they can do whatever they want. They can try to have Mueller as a witness. If they're not happy with that, as the president would say, they can try to subpoena the rest of the 13 angry Democrats who filled out the Mueller team staff until they finally find somebody that they have something to work with.
Well, they're already seizing on the nuances in the report, or the part of the report where Mueller and his people could not.
Prosecutors deal in nuances.
I know,
is that a newsflash?
Right, I hear you. But they were unable to say that no criminal conduct occurred. But again, had they had even a sense of that, they would have put it in there. Right?
I deal in the real world. I mean, what does that mean to you? That means that they can't exclude the hypothesis that the president might have obstructed justice? Really? I mean, you know, the point is that as the judge that I clerked for long ago told me, it's not enough that God knows. Okay? Prosecutors deal in evidence about whether or not either they have sufficient evidence to bring a case or they don't. This is the determination now. As a result of the Mueller investigation and the Attorney General's findings, we now have the answer. The answer is it's over with regard to criminal conduct involving the President of the United States.
So this open-ended thing that you hear from a number of Democrats who are saying, you know, on this obstruction thing, it's not a slam dunk, and they're going to keep pursuing that, and there was almost an invite from Mueller in the report to say that's up to Congress to go beyond this and all. Is it?
No one's trying to carve the House Judiciary Committee away from its constitutional prerogative, but they have a decision to make, and that is whether they're going to beat a dead horse or not. We now have, despite what Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer says, we now have the benefit of the report, and the American people will decide. But from preliminary indications and an initial review of the report suggests quite clearly that they were exhaustive in their investigation. They looked at the president's conduct. They made an evaluation of his intent. They did so in context. And now both Bob Mueller and the Attorney General have spoken. And as far as that is concerned, that is over. What the House Judiciary Committee decides to do in their infinite wisdom, you know, have at it. But
and you can't base your report on conjecture and what might have been. Certain things happened. One thing that got a lot of people's attention within the report, I want to make sure I'm quoting accurately here, is that the president was very, very concerned about how far this probe was going in the early days. We're going back to June of 2017, when he directed the White House counsel, Don McGahn, to call the acting attorney general and say that Bob Mueller should be ousted because he had conflicts of interest. McCann at the time, I think you and I were talking back then, decided he would rather resign than trigger what he thought would be like another Sinai massacre. It never came to pass, in other words. And Mueller finished his report.
And the Attorney General spoke to that issue today by saying no act was actually taken. Now, look, in a cosmic world, everybody can talk about, well, you know, it might be obstructive conduct because the president might have intended it, even if he didn't actually carry it out.
And the proof is in the pudding. Did it happen? No.
Right. And the
president might it have been considered? A lot of things are considered.
And we would expect, would we not, any chief executive, any president to depend on the advice of both his lawyers, the White House counsel, his personal counsel, the Department of Justice, and so on and so forth.
When, you know, Sessions and this whole thing with a special counsel and all that.
Which given his context, is completely understandable.
And you dealt with that with Bill Clinton.
Absolutely.
No one likes having guys like you know, breathing up there, you know what, and then he was frustrated.
I go back to what Jim Comey said. You know, early on in the administration, the FBI snuck people into the White House to try to interview Michael Flynn. If I had found out about that and I was the president, I would have been none too pleased. Now, are you telling me that if I had been angered by that and tried to take action to sort of prevent that from happening, that constitutes obstruction of justice? Really? That's your standard of obstructive conduct? I don't think so. And I think that's a practical, reasonable analysis of the facts and the law uncovered.
What happens now? Now, a lot of Democrats said we want to get in the bottom of that. We don't want all these people to come up to the Hill. want to see what happened.
We're going to try to, I guess what's going to happen is there's going to be, that's the right word, there is going to be an attempt to relitigate it. The question is whether the American people are going to stand for this.
Will the American people stand for what a lot of Republicans want to see is go back and investigate how the investigation started, or just everyone sees it?
I think that your latter point has to be carefully done. I am not suggesting or calling, as some have, for a separate special counsel investigation to get into that. But I do think it's important for the Department of Justice, after the issuance of IG Michael Horowitz's report, to take a look at that, to find out the origins of what became the Russia collusion investigation. I'm not saying we belabor the issue, but I think it's important, mostly from the standpoint of just what the president said, understanding how this is not supposed to happen to a president of the United States or any president of the United States. And if things need to be looked at, they should be looked at.
I'm surprised how little was redacted in the end.
Well, there you go. A mountain out of a molehill, right? Yeah. So at the end of the day, Congress is going to see everything.
Or that bar, whatever you make of the wisdom of having a press conference beforehand, how he characterized this report, I haven't read the whole thing, but it seems to be in line with the report's findings.
And that's the judgment the public is going to have to make. I am entirely confident that the public will come to the reasonable conclusion that it was an accurate recitation of an evaluation of the Mueller investigation, and the Attorney General did, in fact, what it is he said he was going to do.
Well, I know
which is to be as transparent as he could be, consistent with the law.
Apology.
Well,
I kept in his duties.
Nobody said this was going to be an easy job, but he's attempting to do it. And all this other nonsense that you've heard about, oh, the real collusion here is the collusion between Donald Trump and his hand-picked Attorney General William Barr. It seems like what has happened here is the Attorney General is doing his job.
He was going by book. This is how it had to be done. Now, you could argue, did he need to do this presser today? And a lot of people say he was doing the president's bidding. But again, the characterization he gave, which was initially the source of all this anger from the left, it seems unjustified.
I wanted to understand myself personally the context under which the Attorney General made the decision about obstruction of justice. I think that's a question separate from the text of the report. I think that's important for the American people to know, and I believe that explains why the Attorney General came forward first before the report was issued, to explain to the American people why he made that determination.
And whether it conflicted with Mueller's explanation.
Correct.
Which so far appears not to be, but we don't know.
In certain instances, I think the Attorney General said this morning that on the law and the facts, he had a different view. He and the Deputy Attorney General had a different view than Mueller with regard to evaluate.
Rod Rosenstein also had a different view of this.
Right. After they consulted with the Office of Legal Counsel. Right. Isn't that what the Attorney General was supposed to do?
But
yes.
You lawyers can never agree on anything.
Well, I think
we argue a ham sandwich.
But we can agree on the bottom line. Ultimately, it's the Attorney General's determination as a matter of fact, law, and most importantly, policy to resolve the end of the investigation as far as the Department of Justice is concerned. What the House of Representatives decides to do, that's now up to them.
Yeah.
And they're going to be evaluated on that conduct just as much as the Attorney General is evaluated on how he concluded this investigation.
Which is maybe why, Nancy Pelosi a couple of days ago was saying we should be sticking, we Democrats, to the kitchen table issues, all but saying when it comes to this stuff, move on.
Well, and if they don't move on, the public is going to perceive this in the context of a presidential election, which is automatically suspect. So there you are.
Yeah, I hear you. All right, thank you, Robert Ray.